Hey, family, welcome. I am here tonight. We have called for a special. Look at that. We getting all fancy and stuff. We got it. We having us a special edition of relevant conversations with yours truly, me, Bishop John Solders, and I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about, to spend just a little bit of time around Juneteenth, and let's talk a little bit of history, and let's do a little framing of it, And I asked my brother from another mama, to be with us tonight. He is no stranger to this platform and our show, and certainly has been closest to me that I could probably think of here in the state of Connecticut for a number of years. We've journeyed together, walked together, cried together, laughed together, played together, and just had some good old fun along these dusty roads of Connecticut. He hails from Los Angeles, California, but by way of Mississippi. All of us come through, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida. We come from the South by way of, but he is the senior pastor of the Mount Airy Baptist Church in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Y'all help me welcome my brother, the Reverend Dr. Anthony L. Bennett. Greet the people, sir.
Hey, y'all. Good to see. Good to be seen and good to have you all on. And man, I'm honored to be here on tonight. Brother, you said LA by way of Mississippi. Man, right now you see me, not in my usual background, but you see me with a t-shirt, a family reunion t-shirt. I'm actually in Winona, Mississippi, where our people from Hazelhurst, Hazel Green, Mississippi, and we are here. My mother and her siblings are here in family reunion style, seeking to connect and reconnect with each other.
Look at that. This is some of what we wanted to talk about tonight, and it's just as the Lord would have it that you would be doing what you're doing as we talk about Juneteenth a little bit. You had invited me to share in Bible study with the Mount Airy congregation the other day, and we couldn't do it. I said, man, why don't we come together and talk about Juneteenth and its significance? Can I just, by way of background, talk a little bit about how we get to this Juneteenth by way of history? As many of you know, the Emancipation Proclamation was talked about in 1862 and was noised abroad. There was some conversation afoot. Ultimately, in September, it was decided that, in fact, through Abraham Lincoln. Now, remember, 1862. We're talking about right in the middle of the Civil War here in this country. Abraham Lincoln said, "I'm going to sign this executive order." These are terms now we know a whole lot about, but an executive order that said in the states, in some of the states that had the Union, that was a part of the Union, it would end the enslavement period. Slavery would end in those states. So all of those who were enslaved in the Union states, y'all's free. And it would go into effect January 1st, 1863. 1863. Now, and so there was a lot of cheering and a lot of, a whole lot of things happened. Black folks started signing up and started listening to becoming a part of the Union Army. The probably the most famous of those black troops was the Massachusetts 54th. That is the regiment of black soldiers that is popularized in the movie Glory with Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman and other folk. Denzel got him an Academy Award with that famous, that boy can drop that one tear. Can't he drop that one tear? He can drop that one tear. So that happened. Here in Connecticut, we had 3 regiments, not just one, but 3. Connecticut 29th, 30th, and 31st regiments of black soldiers that fought in the Civil War. Now, here we go. The Civil War ended with the surrender of General Robert E. Lee of the Confederate troops to General Ulysses S. Grant in Appomattox, Virginia. Okay, in April 1865. Let's fast forward 2 months later. In Galveston, Texas, General George Granger arrived there and realized. Now let me back up just a little bit. Although there was a grand general surrender of the war by General Lee to General Grant, there was still fighting that went on all across the South. So the news had to go. They didn't have no internet, y'all. Wasn't no TV.
No social media.
No social media. Wasn't nobody posting up. All right. So it took them a little while to get the news. And so by the time General Granger had arrived in Texas, and they were still fighting up until about mid-May, history records. And so he arrived in Galveston, Texas, and realized he needed to prepare an announcement, because not only had the war ended 2 months earlier, most of the black people he encountered there had not heard that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed 2 years before. So he prepared and then had it read in Galveston, Texas, at the headquarters of the Union Army in Galveston. General Order Number 3 that declared that, one, the war had ended, but that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed, and that African Americans who were enslaved no longer were enslaved, that they were free.
In the southern states. In the southern states. You did that. In the southern states. When the black in Missouri still struggled.
That's right. Well, yeah, in the southern states. In Missouri, there was some problems. Thank you, because I'm from Missouri, so we were still on the struggle bus. We was on the struggle bus, and some people still want to keep reenacting that they won that won the war. But anyway, so it is there that General Order Number 3 was prepared and then announced on June 19th, 1865. Ergo, we get Juneteenth. That's the literally how we get this celebration. Now, I say that, but also let me just remind folks that all along the way, from the time the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect, there were folk who were in fact beginning to celebrate. We get the tradition of watch night service, watch meeting. In fact, because there were a number of churches that watched the night of New Year's Eve, not in a New Year's Eve party. They was at the church house in prayer. And at the stroke of midnight in Washington, D.C., and in New York City, and in Philadelphia, some of these churches began to celebrate because, in fact, the Emancipation Proclamation had went into effect. That tradition of watch meeting is a kind of Emancipation Day, if you will. There are then other traditions in other regions, like in Washington, D.C. as well. April 16th, I believe, was the day in which a federal law was enforced, in fact, freeing all those who were enslaved in Washington, D.C. So Emancipation Day in Washington, D.C., there is a tradition of celebrating that day in April, right? And in fact, there are days all along the way in different regions and parts of the country. They're too numerous to name, that go into September, that have honored or commemorated what we now call Emancipation Day. So you will hear some of us refer to Juneteenth not just as a day, but a emancipation season, if you will, to pay tribute and honor to those whose traditions are different. Now, here's another piece of this. There are other emancipation celebrations of Black folk that are not just those who were enslaved here in the United States. In Trinidad, for example, Emancipation Day is August 1st. Y'all know there were enslaved people not just here in the United States. Okay,
all the diaspora died.
All throughout the diaspora. So there are all these different spaces and places where Emancipation Day is celebrated or observed in all kinds of ways. But it was Frederick Douglass to say, what does to the Negro, what is the meaning of July 4th, Independence Day? When we were, in fact, not independent or nor freed. And so there are some who would celebrate not July 4th, but July 5th. Interesting bit of history. But throughout the United States, there are these number of different, what I would call emancipation celebrations. That's what they're referred to as. That start maybe in April and close out in late September, even October. So what we're talking about is this season of emancipation. And what I wanted to do is, that's the end of my history lesson. What I wanted to do is
good lesson.
Listen, to have you talk a little bit about how you spoke of Juneteenth in the context of as a pastor, and then let's talk a little bit more of not only this history, and I'm gonna come back to what it means to do this. You know, in my hometown, my mama's hometown, you and your mama's hometown. My mama's hometown is Waynesboro, Mississippi. I'm gonna say it like they said down there. Waynesboro. All right, Waynesboro. Let me say it for those of you who don't speak, but Ebonics. Waynesboro, Mississippi, and the big day is celebrated the second Sunday of August. That's homecoming. Homecoming Sunday. So in Waynesboro, right outside of Waynesboro, the city, right in the surrounding the town, Wayne County, my family, all roads lead to Hollybush Baptist Church on the second weekend of August, and that's where we celebrate. You talking about some good barbecue? You talking about some good potato salad? You talking about some greens with the real fatback? You off your diet. off your diet.
You
You
off your
can't
diet.
be
Yeah,
on your,
yeah, yeah.
you off your diet. You know, it's gonna be some good eats and some good family time. It is the second week in August for us. So again, these moments, these celebrations, what I would call emancipation celebrations, where family gets together, and you know, when we celebrate Emancipation Day, in whatever form or other, it's gonna be some good eating. It's gonna be some telling jokes, some telling some lies. It's gonna be some truth telling. It's gonna be a lot of hugging. And now this is my family. This ain't yours. Might be a couple of, you know, there's gonna be a fight or two. It's gonna be some somebody gonna get talking loud. Somebody gonna say something they shouldn't have said, and so somebody it's gonna be a little minor beef. And Big Mama and them gonna have to say, y'all cut it out, or I'm gonna clear it up for everybody. You know, somebody's gonna be there. You know, Uncle somebody, Big Mama somebody gonna tighten everything up and get it back on track. But these opportunities for us as a family to get together. Now I'm gonna stop and say, you had a Bible study and talked to it within the context of your congregation. Talk a little bit about what that meant for you and what it means in this context today.
So, man, yeah, I think you gave a great broad stroke with some very specific highlights. Yesterday, Wednesday, we have our regular Bible study, and month of June, we've sort of highlighted our youth, our children this weekend. LGBTQI plus community will do the following weekend. And this week, we wanted to highlight the facts that you laid out, put it in the context where most Black Christians get it in terms of scriptural context, but we sort of put context to the scripture as you just did with historical parallels, or not even historical parallels, but metaphorical and spiritual parallels vis-a-vis what is it like to be free, but to live as an enslaved person. And I think we explored that both historically as our ancestors through the telling of the Juneteenth season. You know, I'm thankful that you mentioned that the slaves didn't know, but you best believe the slave masters knew. And there were stories about the slave masters knowing what the Emancipation Proclamation was, that had already been enacted. And they could no longer legally hold them as enslaved property, but yet they kept it. I'm thankful for Mama Dr. Itahari Toure, who passed on to a group of us pastors an Instagram post that really gave good historical facts like you gave relative to the fact that what I shared, what I've known that Lerone Bennett shared years ago, decades ago in his book, Forced into Glory, that Abraham Lincoln didn't do this voluntarily. It was a political move. He was forced into it. So we put some sobriety. Glad that he made that choice. Glad that he pushed through. But what we realized, he had to be convinced, and he was forced into it, as Lerone Bennett so eloquently writes. But the Emancipation Proclamation came, particularly those enslaved in Texas did not hear about it. And so they still left. And so what is it like to function in a system that still treats you as a slave, even though you are free? And I think, you know, we engaged in terms of Zoom chat around what that means. And while, yes, it is a day of celebration, I'm thankful that Bridgeport this past weekend held its Juneteenth celebration at Seaside Park. So there was a parade, like it is in Galveston and across the country, parades, vendors, businesses, which lifts up the entrepreneurial, the nature, the celebration, the relief. And yet I also mentioned there in our study yesterday, what Bishop William Barber talks about, and what I think some honest conversation. It wasn't all celebration. Some of the formerly enslaved ancestors were probably pissed. They were probably angry that they continued, that they were deceived. All right, that they were deceived. And I think a part of what, again, the Instagram post that we saw from Dr. Touré highlighted the person that was narrating it, highlighted the fact that Granger came, yes, but he came with 10,000 predominantly Black Union soldiers. So there was backup there, and there's always been Black backup to our own freedom, which sort of just obliterates this sense that somehow another white folks came in, swooped in, and saved us and stopped it. Certainly there was partnership. Certainly there was advocacy. But, our ancestors put skin in the game, put their bodies on the line for our freedoms. And I think we talked about how, the sacrifices that have been made for us to be here now, which on some level I focused and I ended the Bible study primarily with how do we engage both our personal spiritual development, but what public witness needs to look like as we move forward in today, 2024. In what ways are we holding ourselves back in the production, the Ma'afa production, we do, which is psychodrama, which retells the story of what is popularly known as transatlantic slave trade. What is it like to go from being a fully human person to being snatched or negotiated away and being conditioned to believe that you are 3/5 of a human being? So in the Ma'afa production that we do, there's a particular line that is recited by a group of our children. I think you remember the line. It says, or the refrain, tell me your story. I know I act as if I don't care. I know I look at you with a blank stare. I know I won't remember everything that you say, but tell me your story anyway. And one of the verses of that spoken word chant that about 15, 20 young people would say is, who is enslaving us today by keeping information like this from us? And the context is that that sometimes we, the older adults, are keeping information that would help liberate our young people to really understand the depths of the sacrifices. Because for some of us, the information is too painful to share. Again, Winona, Mississippi is where Emmett Till got off the bus. All right. When I saw the ABC series on Mamie Till, and again I knew it, but then called my mother, and my mother, oh yeah, Anthony, that happened. But the mass of the people, it was such a regular occurrence that you, in terms of lynching, in terms of beatings, and that you just deal with it. And I guess the frame that we were trying to get at yesterday is, what is our responsibility that we have levels of freedom? And with that comes, with the levels of freedom, comes the responsibility to pass on the word, to pass on the knowledge, to help liberate others. As Harriet Tubman, who had her own freedom, but risked her freedom in order to help other people become free. I think our task, the reason why I do this in Bible study, and the reason why I connected to the scripture, is because you don't have the right, from my faith perspective, to just be concerned about your own salvation. But I believe the Christian faith calls us to a collective sense of responsibility for our collective salvation, our collective deliverance, healing. All right, not just to go to heaven, but where we are right here on earth. And so, as you were talking, laying out the framework, I thought about the real challenge for the Black church and for the church period, but in particularly for the Black church, to be a witness when the passion of our culture, the Black culture, is certainly more integrated into the dominant culture. So that talking like this is all right. Yeah, why do I want to come to church to watch over the night? You know, the practical cultural convenience makes us want our faith delivered to us, our spiritual formation delivered to us in ways that's convenient, in ways that don't necessarily push us to the brink, which to me is in contrast to the very in-your-face realities that the ancestors had to deal with, not glorifying it, not looking at it with rose-colored glasses, but to simply say that in many ways we become comfortable in our faith expression, where we center it around ourselves and not around understanding the clarion call, even in this day and time that the Black church is in. And I'm not blaming any one particular church, any one particular way, but it is as though we have been so assimilated. Juneteenth, and we just look at the celebrations of the day, and we don't really think through, okay, well, what does that mean for us today? We used on some level Galatians, in one reference, we use Galatians 5, stand firm in the freedom from which you have come, and don't get yourself caught up in the yoke of slavery again. Obviously, Paul was talking about it from his perspective, talking to a particular audience. What I sought to do was to say, listen, we all have a level of knowledge. We know about Juneteenth. We know some of these historical facts, but what are you doing with it? And don't use it as say, well, they paid the price, so I can enjoy. You can't just enjoy. You got to look at what we need to do today to pay it forward. Because if not, we already see the rollback. We already see the pushback to push us back. So it's almost like what I shared in here. While our families, Juneteenth and Emancipation Process seasons era, while we were in the era moving toward reconstructing our lives from the horrors of the institution of slavery, so too were white establishments, and particularly in the South, seeking to reconstruct laws and systems that would reinstitute de facto slavery, i.e. sharecropping and those other forms. And yet it was the church that was central to finding, former enslaved and knowing the names. And if, we didn't have DCF, we didn't have all these other places, but the church was that place where if you were looking for your relative and your child and you wondered if they were still alive from the enslavement, you would come to the church. And there were ways of that Black newspapers advertised. And there were so many other ways that the church partnered with institutions that we had to have ourselves to advance the freedom of our people. And I'm determined, but there are moments, Doc, where I find myself honestly discouraged by what we spend so much of our time on, while people are looking to reconstruct right now as we speak. The ways of enslaving us, our mind, our money, and on some level, our movements and what we do with our body. So Emancipation Proclamation. So Juneteenth is as the Reverend Dr. Otis Moss Jr., who is the elder, one who actually was co-pastor of Ebenezer in Atlanta. Dr. Otis Moss Jr. said one time, and I've used this throughout the days when we talk about celebrations, he talked about moments of celebration for years of struggle. And so for me, Juneteenth is a moment of celebration for the years, the decades, and even the centuries of struggle that our people have experienced.
You still can't get used to muting and unmuting. Listen here.
That's all good.
You lifted up a number of things that I want to pause and just highlight or talk a little bit about. First off, there is a narrative that says that Black folk did not fight for their freedom. That in fact it was other folk that took on the effort to do so, and you would be mistaken. Every state in the North had Black regiments. There were Black people who signed up ready to go to enlist in the struggle to fight for our freedom. And let's really be clear. Most of us grew up, we're the generation that watched Roots. We are the generation, 1976, 77. That movie miniseries, one of the very first of those types of television events, the miniseries. LeVar Burton playing Kunta Kinte. We all have stories in our families. If in fact, those stories get passed down, and they haven't, they were in my family, that we just, we didn't just roll over and say, yes, I'm after. There were plenty of us that were taking up arms, that were running away, that were resisting in all kinds of ways. Can you imagine? How many people who ate food at the hands of enslaved people, that something wasn't in that food? Oh, come on here. Come on. Something was in that food that,
and that spirit was passed on and portrayed in the movie The Help. All right. Yeah, the blueberry pie, one of them pies.
You have some pie. So the truth and the fact of the matter is that there were many of us, of our ancestors that joined in the struggle. Let me also say there were plenty that fought in liberative ways before the civil rights. Before the Civil War. In the War of 1812, there were many African Americans who fought on the side of the British, because the British said, if you fight for us, if you join our effort, we'll give you your liberty, your freedom, and we're gonna give you some land. And the fact of business is, they did both. In some instances, the War 1812, even in quote the Revolutionary War, and the War of Independence here, there were some African Americans, formerly enslaved folk, who fought on the other side because a promise was made to them about their liberation and their freedom. We have the history of the Denmark Vesey or the Nat Turners of our time. So, listen.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes, of course.
Share this. Do you know? I just found this out maybe a couple of years ago. I saw it on a post reposted from a Morehouse brother, Pastor Sam Ross Lee. He posted, I guess it was a video or a new one of the PBS, can't remember, it wasn't exactly PBS, but it was a story that I did not know. Maybe you already knew it, about Yale or New Haven was actually was slated to be one of the places to have the first HBCU.
I do know of it. 1832. Yes. There was a movement afoot here in Connecticut to have a Black school that were taught that, and their teachers and faculty would have been Yale professors for African American men. Now, of course, see, what y'all don't say is that all these schools that got started way back in the day was all for men. But no women going to them schools. All right. So Harvard, Yale, Princeton, all of the Ivies were all male schools. So let's be clear.
And what killed it, and then what I learned, what killed that thought of having the school there was the Nat Turner Rebellion. based on
In
what you
part,
talked about.
in
And they're
part,
like,
in
no,
part.
we ain't gonna train them to come and do what Nat Turner did. So it squashed the very rebellion. So of course we're not going to hear about all of the rebellions that happened and the ways that our people fought, or the ways, or the frame of the ways that people chose the sea and chose the sea for their children rather than to endure what was there, before the Emancipation Proclamation.
Right.
So we have all been framed, unfortunately, and I guess, and that's why I'm saying, on some level, freedom, as you mentioned, freedom is understanding that Black folk did fight, and most Black folk did not roll over in the sense that they did not seek to resist. But unfortunately, the way that we read it, hey, it was tough, but people just went along. And no. There were many examples, men and women.
That's exactly right. That in fact, we come from a tradition of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
That's the better frame to place it in. That we are from a people who resisted. That spirit that says, "No, I ain't gonna take it," that shows up at the grocery store. Y'all don't know what I'm talking about, but some of y'all do. That thing that shows up that you ain't gonna be just talked to any kind of way. You're gonna put, let me say it this way: you're gonna put a little respect on my name. You're gonna put a little respect on it. That thing, our ancestors had. That comes from somewhere very deep. The epigenetics now have told us that we have been impacted and infected by what has gone on culturally and psychically and emotionally. We bear, okay, y'all want some Bible on it? Bearing in our body, the wounds, right, of our Lord Jesus. That when Jesus showed up, doubting Thomas, y'all call him. I like Thomas. Thomas wasn't no doubting in a bad sense. He was like, I believe it when I see it. Y'all talking some yin yang. And some of us is like that too. You talking about this, that, and the third. But then when Jesus show up, he don't talk to Peter and John and them. He go right to Thomas. He said, "Thomas, put your hand here." Yeah. Let me look at me. Put your, feel that. Here's the wounds. Here's the evidence that it's me. Right?
Man, it'll trip how even we frame him as doubting. Maybe Jesus didn't frame him as doubting.
Yes, sir.
Maybe Jesus framed him as, come on, see it. See the wounds. It's still there. But I want to stretch your faith.
Yeah.
Because
he showed up for him. He showed up not for John and them. He showed up for
already seen him. Yeah. Come on, Doc. You went to meddling and preaching now, Doc. Preaching. Right.
This for me, you raised another thing that I also want to bring up. That we can't be defined as Black folk here in our sojourn in the Americas, and I want to make that distinction. Not just Black folk here in the United States, Black folk throughout the diaspora. I've had the occasion and had the privilege to actually spend time in other places in the world, and go to Brazil, for example, and go to Rio de Janeiro, and go to Little Africa. And then to do a little bit of study about the sojourn of West Africans through the Great Maiapa to the Americas. Many more people from Africa came to the Americas through Brazil and South America. So when we disembarked from the plane, I was like, "Lord, Pamela, look at all these people that look like the people we know from home. Don't that look like Junebug?
Come on, Doc.
That look like Boo Boo right there." I mean, and I walk up and people walked up to me, started to speak. The only reason we couldn't be in no deep dialogue, they don't speak English. They speak Portuguese, and Brazilian Portuguese, or we call it Portuguese, but Portuguese. And so they start talking that, and I only know obrigado and a couple other things, bom dia, and that good morning. Obrigado, me thank you. And then I'm about done. I'm about done with my Portuguese. But that we look like them. And there are more people. Listen to this. this is just to my point. There are more people who have African ancestry in Brazil than any other country in the world, with the exception of Nigeria. Hold on to that for a minute. Just wrestle with that for a moment.
That's deep, Doc. I'm holding it.
So my point in raising it is that our journey doesn't start with being captured in Africa somewhere in the bush and brought in change. That we have had millennia of what it means to be free. And we've had, in the context of human history, all roads lead to Lucy. Where did they find Lucy? Where did they find the mother of civilization and of humanity? They found the mother of humanity in Africa. We all come from Africa, even those that are challenged with melanin, even those lightly challenged, the folks live on the vanilla side of town. They come, their ancestors, and now I like it now because, everybody can do their DNA. Everybody, you can get in there and, take your little swab yourself and go on down there and send it off, and then they bring it back. We all got DNA from Africa. So for me, it's also important not just to talk about linking us to the people we come from who always have resisted. Because everybody didn't get captured in Africa. Let's see, that's another part of the story that we don't talk about. Everybody didn't come on the boats, in chains. The vast majority of the Africans were in Africa. They still are. Their progeny is in Africa. But that we also, too, have this lineage and legacy that predates, in fact, is the beginning of all there is as far as humanity is concerned. So for me, Juneteenth suggests what you've named. Then don't we have a responsibility to at least reframe the narratives? Yeah. Right? And reframe these narratives in such a way that places us right-sizing what I would call the falsehoods, or the little less than truth is still a lie. I'm going to say it's a lie. Sure.
Doc, you pushed me on something, Doc. I got to put this in. Arthur Cole Riley in Black Liturgies on Juneteenth writes, "The memory is one of the tension. Grief, as we remember this country, has a history of proclaiming liberty while doing nothing to tangibly ensure our protection until it benefits its whiteness. And the joy, as we remember that even still, our liberation cannot be kept from us." Our liberation cannot be kept from us. Because we are a people of imagination. Again, number of people talking with Dr. Teray and that Pastor David Brawley and others, in Melva Sampson and others, this sense of our people had an imagination because they knew there was life before the enslavement. And they can imagine a life after the enslavement. So for me, Juneteenth speaks about that sense of, I'm going to deal with the grief and the pain, all right, of I think we said it in the Bible study. There were those who were elders who probably felt that their time in this earthly realm was about to expire and they would begin the walk of the ancestral realm. But yet there were younger people who could still imagine, all right, the possibility of some of what they heard was happening in Africa and how they could create some of that in America or in Brazil, whatever the location. And the elders had the imagination that I've seen the promise, and I may not get there with you, all right. I may be a part of that great cloud of witnesses that gonna cheer you on, but they still had imagination. And so your first question for me was, what is the church? I will be honest and share with you that one of the bigger challenges for me, so whether it's Juneteenth, whether it's down in Mississippi, the celebration the Freedom Day that you speak about, whether it's the Freedom Day in August, whatever the Freedom Day, what does it say about our faith and imagination? Because you as a pastor, me as a pastor, as a leader, we know, and as a believer, whether you're a pastor or not, the enemy, the trickster, however you want to call it, gets you if the trickster convinces you that you can't imagine. As someone said, oppressed people don't have time to imagine. And yet there is a way that we honor the ancestors because they could imagine a brighter day, even while they knew there was going to be hell to pay. All right, for this freedom. Whenever there's forward movement, there's always the backlash. So for me, the question is, what is the church going to do to instill and to live out the imagination of faith for this hour? Given those two realities.
That's right. So I'm reminded, you're making me think about how other revolutions, other liberation moments got started and then ultimately overcome. Let's talk about Haiti. 1791 was the beginning of the Haitian Revolution, and it started with two people of faith, a man and a woman, when they gathered in the Brush Harbor and they did ritual. They prayed and sang. Oh boy. Ooh, they prayed and sang and called on the great spirits. They called on God, and then they picked up whatever they could because they didn't have no weapons. They picked whatever they had. What did God say to Moses? What's that in your hand? Go down there and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. He said, well, I can't talk. He said, I'm going to send your brother Aaron. He can talk for you. But what you got in your hand? What's that in your hand? Take your shoes off this holy ground. Then, of course, Moses is better than me in that story because a bush burning and talking, I'd have been out of there. You can out, and wouldn't have told nobody, what had happened out there on that backside of the mountain. But here we have these moments. So the Haitian Revolution that began in 1791, that ended in fact, them overcoming and winning and independence being declared in 1804. And it scared the bejesus out of all the other white people, including here in the United States, where they did not want that story told. That in fact, a group of Black people gathered themselves together, found some way to have commonality, even amongst the differences. You had the Maroons, you had those who served in the house, you had those who was in the field, you had those who spoke French, you had those who didn't speak French. Talk to me here. We were from all kind of different. It is not that Black people are some kind of monolith. We are the same. We are not the same, and yet we can walk and gum at the same time. We can hold on to our individuality, our differences, if you will. We can listen. We can agree. I want to do it this way. You want to do it that way. But we also can posit what's going to be the best for the people. What's going to be the best for the community? What's going to work out? And listen, we can try this way, and this is how it goes. Most of the time, we can go down there for a while the way you want to go, and if it seems like it ain't gonna work out, we're gonna turn around, go back, and go the other way. Because it ain't one way to do it; it's multiple ways. There are multiple ways to any schema. All right, in order for us to get our freedom and our liberation. I'm thinking about that, and I think Juneteenth also represents for us this moment in time where we fought for our own freedom. And then we get a message that was delayed. I'm hearing now from Martin King, who said, justice delayed is not justice, is justice denied, right? And so, listen, once it's delayed for a while, here's another songwriter years ago, he said, not now doesn't mean never.
Right. Right.
All right.
Right.
So
Right.
so I prayed and I prayed all night long, prayed and I
Until
prayed until I
until
found.
till
All
I
right.
found the Lord. Yeah.
My soul couldn't be contented.
Mm, mm,
My soul couldn't
mm.
be contented. My soul couldn't be contented until I found
Until
the Lord.
I found him.
So for me, and then Walter put a coda on the back end of that. So then once you pray all night long and find the Lord, then you got the victory.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
So for me, if we want to talk about faith and spirituality, it's got to be. And I love how you began. You came at it saying that, listen, my faith informs me that we've got to have discussions in our faithful spaces around what does this mean. Juneteenth has some both historic significance, but also has some broader significance, not only for Black people, but for all of us. Because here again, Dr. King said, I can't, I can't be free if you ain't free. I can't be over here in Atlanta talking about freedom is, and y'all over here in Birmingham, and the struggle still is real and pressing us, right? So it is for us. It's even more than a responsibility. Somehow we're not doing what we need to be doing. If we're not somehow seeking liberation, not for ourselves only. I'm sorry.
Well,
go ahead.
No, man. No, I think you own it because you lift up, if I'm truthful, you lift up my tension, the tension of what I call and maybe it's not a tension because it's really both and. We don't have the luxury of one or the other. We must deconstruct the mythology or the mistruths of the day of Juneteenth, but we must also construct the very realm of possibility of what a personal faith looks like in public witness and service. And like you said, it's going to look different. It's not going to be a monolith where not all Black preachers are going to do one thing, but and not all people are going to do one thing. All right. And if we get off Facebook hating on each other about that and realize that we all doing different things, then I think we can call each other on the challenging pieces that's not leading to the revolution or to the freedom. But here is the tension that I'm speaking of. Let me get very specific. If you have been the one who has struggled for 30, 40, 50 years, and you see a movement, the founding of the Lord in that movement, then you're thanking God for that movement. And yet at the same time, if you are somewhere in the middle of that movement, or you're at the beginning of that movement, you like, man, we still got so much ways to go. All right. And so, what in the world is a holiday? What in the world is a holiday? Some people would say that the holiday, making it a holiday, is a detriment to the cutting edge of fighting. So now we got the holiday, so we'll get comfortable. Because I'm probably at a heart a pastor, and I heard someone say that the heart of the prophetic is the pastoral, because you're moving people over a period of time into a direction of freedom and wholeness and liberation. I'm learning to say we all have different roles. I think, we have to, some of us need to celebrate the fact that this is Opal Lee. I thank God for this woman who in her generation, she kept fighting. She kept fighting. I don't want to take anything away from her effort because I didn't live in her era. I mean, I wasn't an adult necessarily in her era of adulthood. So I must honor her as as she's an elder for her struggle and those in her generational, fight, right? But like you said, the prophetic part of me says, but I also must lovingly critique the institution and to say, are we going to use this just as a day like we've used on like Martin Luther King, that for many people it's a day not to think about Dr. King's words, not to challenge yourself to see how you engaging his words, not just his I have a dream, but his message against Vietnam and all this other stuff. Are we going to protest as loudly about Palestine as he did about Vietnam? And what are we going to do? So I'm not going to lie and say that I don't wrestle with those truths, those two realities, celebrating the progress. But listen, we still got stuff to do, and we're living through another sense of genocide in terms of Gaza. So what does that, that Harriet Tubman spirit says? No, we can't. We got to go get some more folk. All right, some more of our people. So Doc, I think that's a part of the tension that I feel.
That's exactly right. I'm hearkening back now to Frederick Douglass in July 5th, 1852. So we ain't making this up, y'all. This is stuff that our ancestors have been struggling for many years around this. In 1852, in a speech, he said, "What does the Independence Day, July 4th, mean to the Negro?" Mm-hmm. And a part of that speech, and it's a very famous speech, and I would urge any of you who have never read it to actually go out on the internet and check it out. One part of it, he said, freedom means that a human being should be able to make choices without constraint of coercion being placed on them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if that's part of what freedom means, right, then we can't stop. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the mother, a white mother, somebody's son, mama, until she's able to say in the same way, to their children like the black mamas, then we who believe in freedom cannot rest. It is my belief and my faithful belief that our call, and I've been curating conversations around the role of the prophet, right? In our time, using faith language. And so this is a part of these curated conversations, in fact, that we've got to spend some time, and I'm appreciative of your willingness to engage a little bit around what does it mean, and I certainly applaud Mother Opal Lee, who for decades after decades after decades have been on the wall pushing for legislation that ultimately, by executive order, order, declared June 19th, Juneteenth, as a national holiday, and so. For all of us, let's take this opportunity now to be in some real conversation and some real reflection first, self-reflection first. And then let's be in some conversation and some dialogue about what it means. What does liberation and freedom, emancipation, what does that mean for us today? And then, if you come out on that side like some of us, then the work ain't done. We've got to commit ourselves to re-engage in some spaces and places, and it may not be the way we did in the past, right? Because we got new devils now. There's new devils now. There's some new things that they're doing now. It's an old playbook, but it's some new realities. The way it shows up. All of a sudden, you can just say, they done rigged an election, and you can just say that, and then that's just believe. You just say stuff now, right? And then people just buy it because somebody said it. What happened to the fact you try the spirit by the spirit? If y'all want me to quote Bible, that you try you go check it. The very beginning of having some good sense is to go down and figure out if they right or not. Go do some research and some study. Grab a book or go to the library, Google it, and then wait. Don't just because it's on the internet. Go to a couple of different sources. Let every word be established by 2 or 3 witnesses. Okay, all right.
That's too much like right. That means it requires to have the possibility that your frame is faulty, and many people don't want to own that their the frame of America. I mean, I think I was in conversation, good conversation with some good meaning white folk who wrestle with the fact that the story that they've been told about America is what is in their mind keeps them secure. And so to lose that innocence is, you mean, you know, about the narrative is quite disconcerting for many whites and even some black folk, because again,
Yes.
freedom requires responsibility.
Yes.
It requires self-determination.
Yes.
And if you've been taught, conditioned that your determination, your future, your destiny is in somebody's hands, again, you have to be conditioned as such. And I think to some extent, you know, the tension of the Black church, it has been both a tool of our liberation, but also a tool of conditioning to accept status quo. So we live within that tension. We live with many of us do.
Brother, thank you for taking time out doing your sojourn down with your folks. Give your folks who are my people, give them my regards, and we'll see them soon.
Man, tell me again where you from. I'm gonna tell my people. I know they're gonna know. Where is
Waynesboro. Now, Waynesboro. Listen, Waynesboro is down 50 miles south of Meridian, off 45, State Highway 45, running right down through downtown Waynesboro, Mississippi.
Yep. All right.
It's in the southeast. It's in the southeast corner of the state. So,
all right.
we praise God for you, and thank you, brother, for saying yes to joining us tonight. And listen, folks, Juneteenth it's here. It's a holiday now. Let's then make it have some significance and some meaning. Let's do some reflecting, but then let's couple it with some action, so that not just you get free, but your Pookie and Ray Ray get free, and Rhonda and Cheryl get free, and not just your people, but the people around the corner, down the street, across town, in the other town, in the state next to you. In fact, until all of us get free. None of us are free until all of us are free. How about that? That's Dr. King. And I appreciate you, brother, for sharing with us. And God bless you. And we'll see y'all next time, and where we'll engage in more conversations. Hopefully they're relevant to you. All right. Peace. God bless.
Blessings, you all. Blessings.